I got to give a lot of credit to American Truck Simulator on Steam, the video game, because without that game, I don't think I would have passed. I actually.
How real is it, like American Truck Simulator, to like the reality of?
I mean, well, I'll tell you this much: that the only test that I actually passed. So there's the pre-trip inspection, there's the parking test, and there's the on-road test. And the only test that I passed on the first try was the parking test, and that was all thanks to like me using basically that simulator. It's a video game, but using like a steering wheel and like trying to where to start cutting in the truck to angle the trailer in certain ways. And yeah, so it was definitely a big part of the video game that helped me do it. Without the course, essentially.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the FreightCaviar podcast. Today we are filming in an undisclosed location at the FreightCaviar headquarters. No, we will not tell you where we are, but we have a very, very special guest for you guys today. His name is Krystian Gebis. That's how you pronounce it in Polish, or I guess it'd probably be Gebis, but Krystian Gebis, or Christian. He is the co-founder and CEO of FreightCaviar Technologies, aka ShipperCRM.com. He's also a CDL holder. You got a CDL without even getting taking a CDL driver's course, which is pretty remarkable. And he is the previous founder of Autobon AI. What's up, Krystian?
What's up, man?
How are you today?
You've seen me all day, so it's been pretty good.
Yeah, we literally live together. So
yes.
Yeah, we share beds. No, just kidding. We don't share beds.
Took that one too far. But okay.
Awkward silence. But yeah, so we're working on a couple projects together. Well, I guess more specifically one project, ShipperCRM.com. But you've had a pretty interesting journey here. You're a young kid, and
both of us are pretty young, but yeah.
What's up?
Both of us are pretty young, yeah.
Yeah, but you're a little bit younger than I am. So, and I think you have a pretty cool background. You're from Chicago. You were raised by Polish American parents, and
we only met very recently too.
Yeah.
Kind of somewhat recently, I guess.
Yeah, we met on Twitter, so it's been very recent, and we're working on ShipperCRM.com, which is something that we're definitely going to get into. But before we get into ShipperCRM.com, it'd be kind of cool for you to tell us your background. And
sure.
Obviously, you're from the suburbs of Chicago. You're Eastern European, so you have that truck bloodline somewhere running in you.
Yes.
And so, if you could take us back to, I guess, the beginnings of Autobon AI.
Sure. So my background is in. I studied computer engineering in school. I went to the University of Illinois at Chicago, and while I was there, I was participating in a lot of robotics type projects, and essentially after a couple of years of competing at these competitions, which included things like going to NASA Kennedy Space Center, and with my awesome team winning second place, building like a fully autonomous robot. I was really passionate about the autonomous vehicle space in general. Those were really small, very smaller, much smaller robots than what I ended up working on at Autobon. But about 3 years in, I actually decided to leave school and start my own company. A lot of things led to why I wanted to do that, but basically I always really wanted to start my own company, and kind of shot for the moon with the first one. It was quite on the ambitious side of things. So a lot of the exposure, as you mentioned, I was in Chicago. I have a background, I'm Polish, and there's a huge Polish community, which a lot of those people are in the logistics space, trucking space. So I had a lot of exposure to that whole network, and one of the things that at the time this was 2016, early 2016, and so not many people were in the autonomous space in general were not paying attention to trucks. It was like Google was working on Google self-driving cars. You had Uber at the time, also doing it in-house, a bunch of other companies, but trucks were not really paid attention to that much. And so I decided to go actually after the existing truck market, where I saw there was this really big gap in terms of where people enter as a new truck driver. They enter the market at an astounding rate. So like, for example, I think that churn, I don't know if it's still the case now, but I think I remember something like US Express was rehiring 100% of their drivers or something close to that every single year.
Rehiring 100%, so like 100% would leave.
Yeah, and a lot of these incentive structures that they had for like them plus other companies were really big sign-on bonuses. So they would kind of incentivize new people to come into the industry. These were brand new people like ourselves that never were truckers before, and they'd go to a CDL school and
Sure.
get trained and whatnot, and they get behind the road and they're very new. And I ended up learning that the new drivers, I forgot the statistics now, but they had a significantly more likelihood, kind of almost obviously, significantly more likelihood to cause an accident. I think it was at least like twice or 2 times as much. And I kind of decided one day, this was I think July 2017, we started building kind of like an automated driving system for the truck, and you can retrofit it. The idea was to retrofit it and essentially make it easier to be a truck driver, make it safer, and kind of reduce a lot of the tasks that a computer could do for a truck, and leave the driver to do like the human things. So like, take care of the check-ins at the warehouse, the paperwork, and things like this. So around July 2017, we had a test driver. It was kind of hard to find a driver who was very flexible when we'd write some software for the truck and we'd want to test out what was going on and see if it was working. We had a hard time finding a driver that was reliable because most drivers were working a full-time job, and it was like 3 a.m. sometimes. They're like, hey, we really don't want to wait longer to test something. So eventually just got to the point where one of the trucking companies we were working with, the owner, she's like, just go and get your CDL. And I started thinking to myself, naively, I started thinking to myself that I was like, man, a lot of these guys, they don't mostly even speak English. Like if they can come off the boat to the States and pass these courses, like how hard can they be? So yeah, naively, I kind of went in blindly and went to go into the DMV and signed up to get my CDL. And I promised my friend, it kind of actually started because I promised my friend that I would deliver a load of baggage for this Polish Boy Scout organization that I used to be a part of. And it was 4 weeks basically until that delivery was supposed to happen. I don't have my CDL yet. And long story short, skipping over a bunch of details, I got it in 4 weeks. I definitely failed a bunch of times and was obviously building my company at the same time. So there's a lot of stress going on in it, but it was totally worth it. And at the end of it all, I got to give a lot of credit to American Truck Simulator on Steam, video game, because without that game, I don't think I would have passed.
How real is it? Like American Truck Simulator to like the reality of.
I'll tell you this much, that the only test that I actually passed. So there's the pre-trip inspection, there's the parking test, and there's the on-road test. And the only test that I passed on the first try was the parking test, and that was all thanks to like me using basically that simulator. It's a video game, but using like a steering wheel and like trying to where to start cutting in the truck to angle the trailer in certain ways. And yeah, so it was definitely a big part of the video game that helped me do it without the course, essentially. Yeah, I got my CDL. I delivered a load then from my first load actually was from Chicago to Montreal. So I got across the border.
That's crazy. So wait, you literally just so the audience here understands, like Krystian literally got a CDL without taking any courses. He did American Truck Simulator. He failed a few times in order to get that CDL, but within a matter of 4 weeks, he was able to take a load for the Polish Boy Scouts from Chicago to Montreal, Canada, which is, absolutely mind-boggling to anyone.
It was kind of funny because like once we got into Canada, I guess technically once we got into Montreal, it's like French territory. So so everything is also in French.
Yeah.
Right? And it changes to kilometers.
Sure.
So like on my truck, everything's in miles per hour.
Yeah.
And I kind of had to eyeball everything. And the only thing I actually understood in the signs was like Policja because it's very similar to Polish.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was definitely a trip for sure.
Sure. I mean, that's mind-boggling. I don't know anyone our age that has a CDL, to be honest. And
I think I was like 21, maybe 22.
wait, so did you graduate UIC?
I did not graduate.
You did not graduate. Okay.
No, I did
so
not.
You dropped out of university and you started Autobon AI, and Autobon AI was technology to essentially create self-driving truck or to limit accidents by creating all the sensors, and it's what Tesla's has in their truck, more or less.
The idea was that you can take an existing truck, which will exist on the road for the next 15 years, right? So once the Tesla semi-truck's produced, that truck with high tech, like really high tech, is going to be driving amongst these trucks, which are all mechanical systems. Yeah. And so the idea was that you'd build, that we would provide trucking companies a retrofit, all-in-one retrofit that you can attach to the truck, and it would provide collision avoidance systems, navigation. I really wanted better navigation when I was going to Canada. Like I experienced how like stressful it was on the highway with a full trailer, and you're just like constantly trying to look around, make sure you're not gonna hit anybody. Like when should I change the lane? I think I was using Waze at the time, but like Waze didn't exactly tell you. What I really would have wanted to know is, am I in the right lane right now, and can I reduce the total amount of lane changes I need to make, and things like that. So
and like just real quick, if we're gonna put a link here where you could watch the video of Krystian actually driving the truck, that the software he created for the truck. So what's different for him compared to other self-driving trucking companies is that he was just creating the software, the technology. So like if you drove a Volvo or a Peterbilt, you could just go to Autobon AI, buy the software, and put it into the truck. So
with the sensors.
Yeah, with the sensors. So Krystian was actually successful with that.
Not necessarily.
Successful in the sense of like actually creating the software where it was self-driving.
It was never able to get to production. There's a unfortunate like timing thing, but
But before we get into that, I'm wondering if you could tell. So you drop out of college and like you're like I have this idea for Autobahn AI. What year was this?
2016.
2016. Okay,
Yeah.
So
I was already working on it like April 2016. I remember. Yeah.
So and you raised money, and I'm wondering like how did you raise money? How quickly was it? How was because I mean, if anyone listening here is interested in the venture capital world, which I am, and I've talked to many guests who have been in the venture capital world, I think it's pretty fascinating. Especially in recent years, there's been a lot of investments coming in from Silicon Valley and from all sorts of investors are literally putting a lot of money into logistics. It's an industry that hasn't I guess developed technologically speaking as quickly as other areas. So you had this idea. You're 21 at that time, right?
Roughly.
Okay, super young. Tell us like the beginnings of it. The raising the money and the development of Autobahn AI.
Yeah. So technically my very first investor, I had no network like at all. I mean, for most people when they start, they're like, well, I have no idea how to get started, and that was definitely me saying that to myself. This needs to be done.
Before or after you dropped out of college?
I jumped head first, and then asked myself, how am I going to do this?
Okay.
It needed to be done. I mean, there were, if you looked at it, there were like, I don't know what the number is right now, but there was roughly about 10 people dying every single day from truck-related accidents.
Yeah.
And so it was a pretty big problem when you take that on the year. So anyway, my first investor was one of my close friends. He's roughly my age, Mike Jasko, and he cut me a $20,000 check, essentially no questions asked.
Okay.
Well, no, I mean, I gave him a pitch, and it was a pretty bad pitch, I think, at the time, but he believed me for sure. And since I didn't have a network, I started kind of small, and I was in Chicago, and stayed really in Chicago because all the trucking companies were there. So like the customer base was there, but kind of the problem was that in the Midwest, for something that's hardware intensive, I didn't know this, I didn't realize this at the time, but it took me a while to realize it, that the valuations in the Midwest were generally much lower. And so
for investors,
for this type of a business, which was a very very risky, incredibly risky,
and very like
business.
forward thinking, where you see like in California, like all the startups that are like doing self-driving trucks, robots, and all that stuff. Like that's where like a lot of investors are, and the valuations are much higher. For companies, especially smaller companies or new companies, they get higher valuations.
Exactly, and so really at the beginning, like these valuations are totally just magic numbers. You don't have really any product revenue whatsoever. Actually, the self-driving truck companies today, you can argue that they don't really have product revenue. I mean, they're running loads with their trucks while they're testing, but definitely not profitably because of the amount of sensors and expensive type of sensors that they use. But so anyway, one of the mistakes I made was going and searching for money for investment in small chunks and running with it. And so I'd be raising and building at the same time, and there's definitely a big like first time founder mistake. The right way would be to bundle up a bunch of checks. I mean, ideally, if you can get one person to write the check that you need, that's great. But it's for somebody who, in my position, I was taking a very different approach from these companies that were raising out in the West Coast, which were saying, we're going for removing the driver out of the equation. I mean, for us, it was like, somewhere down the line that was obviously part of the grand plan, but I definitely did not see it the same way as the other companies did, where you can have a couple of trucks in your fleet run the same lane and be able to basically prove that your software is going to work on those on only those lanes. And it's going to be, from a scaling perspective, I always saw it as going to be very challenging if we just choose one lane, get it to work on that one lane. It's easy to sell investors that way because you say we're going to constrain the problem. The operational design domain is much more simplified. And so we're just going to get this one lane to work. But as you see now, it's taking these companies a lot longer. And so from the beginning, we kind of took this approach, which was quite clear. And Tesla started actually verifying this, because they started obviously making incredible progress with the same philosophy, which was that, and Comma AI was a big one too. Comma AI was definitely like they were for cars what we were trying to be for trucks. And they're still, Comma AI is actually quite successful shipping hardware and whatnot. And so the approach that we strongly believed in was that you really need a fleet that collects essentially farms data from all driving scenarios around the country. And the first step is not to make this truck drive itself, but it is to simplify the job for a driver on the highway, first and foremost. That's the easiest part of the problem.
Yeah, by simplify, it just like, for example, all the new cars have like sensors, have like the
adaptive cruise control,
that kind of stuff, where like that, like, and even new trucks like doesn't really exist today. Like even like Peterbilt's, like new Volvos, they don't have that, right?
The newest one, I think the 2023 Freightliners, I think they do have lane. I think they have lane keep assist. I haven't been able to drive the 2023s yet.
Okay.
But when the 2020 Peterbilt that we had only adaptive cruise control, and it was not stop and go, so it would disengage if you got too close, and then it wouldn't accelerate back up.
Yeah.
So they were very limited. Once the software kind of got shipped on those trucks, it got installed, and at the factory, it wouldn't get updated. It wouldn't get better. And so that was an obvious thing for us. It's like, well, once we install hardware onto this truck, there's a pretty big cost in terms of time for us to do that installation. So we got to do it one time and then make that vehicle better and better over time through software updates, right? So most manufacturers aren't set up, whether that's consumer automotive or commercial automotive, for the most part, they're not set up to be software companies. Which kind of, kind of sucks because once you ship a truck, it's like it is what it is for its 15-year lifespan. So that's why part of the problem was these trucks that are being made today, they're going to exist for the next 15 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so back to the question, which was like, how to go about raising. Yeah, part of the problem was not raising one chunk and then kind of deploying that capital right away. But I had, by the end of 2020, or actually right around middle of 2020, it was roughly about 30 separate angel investors.
30 separate angel investors.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
some of them were like plug and play, was like technically VC. Now they're called Forum Ventures. Previously they were called Acceleprise.
Okay.
And Right Side Capital Management. These guys took bets on me, basically individually, and yeah, so that was kind of piece by piece. We were always on a very, very low budget. I generally liked that, even though it was much harder because it just forced us to become creative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's kind of how we went about it. Just small amounts of funds being raised as we met certain milestones,
Sure.
and from there.
And I don't think a lot of people like that are freight brokers or people that work in logistics or trucking. They don't I guess most likely, because I didn't realize this, I guess, before I started talking to people, but the sheer amount of money that's needed to build a company like Autobon AI.
Sure.
You need the best software engineers. You need truck drivers at truck. You need to, like you said, a farm of data collection.
Sure, yeah.
to create the right product. And so without having millions of dollars in a bank account, it's really difficult, if not impossible, to be successful. So you ran into that problem where when the pandemic came in early 2020, you ran out of cash and you weren't able to raise more.
Yeah.
And you unfortunately had to close it. So
I mean, technically it is still not. It's not closed.
Okay.
It's just nobody's working on it right now.
Sure.
But yeah, it came to a screeching halt essentially. Yeah.
But you were you were successful in creating technology that would be useful for trucking companies to install and for truck drivers. So that's definitely huge. And you were very forward thinking with that. And you see nowadays, I guess that's the future, right?
I'd love to see one of these companies actually still take this approach. I think there is one. There's Pronto AI, but I don't know if they fully pivoted away from these on-road trucks to construction vehicles. But they were actually, I guess they were the only other ones that were taking the right approach, in my opinion.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you, in early 2020, you ran out of cash, and then you're what did you do since early 2020 till let's say till
Sure.
end of 2022?
So I didn't throw in the towel just yet because I was too stubborn.
Yeah.
And I tried to.
It's your baby. How could you?
Yeah. So obviously, it was a lot of money that we needed. So to continue with that product, and so we really I grouped with my customers, the customers that we were working with, the trucking companies that we were working with, and we started asking them what do they need. Honestly, just being completely open to just literally hard pivoting the company. And one thing that was surprising was, which we didn't really think about, was when we were doing our deliveries, we were actually delivering with our trucks, our test trucks. We were delivering MRI scanners and CT scanners. They were really good paying loads. I think actually, we were getting paid about $8 to $9 per mile.
Okay.
It was insane rates. But
what
it was
lanes was it?
So Janusz was doing pickups from around O'Hare area.
Okay.
Oh yeah, around O'Hare area, kind of by Elgin O'Hare
Sure.
Expressway. And then he would be delivering the machines to, I don't know, Wisconsin. He delivered them to New Jersey. I think he went down as south as, I don't know if maybe he went.
And was this direct customer?
Yes, it was a direct customer.
Okay.
It's not through a broker.
How did you get the direct customer?
Thankfully, to Mayor of Rolling Meadows. He used to be the logistics manager at at that shipper.
And you knew the mayor of Rolling Meadows?
I forgot how we got in touch. Oh, it was through a mutual. I think Corey Haas at Hosslert actually put us in touch because he used to live in Rolling Meadows, and
Okay.
he's like, "Hey, you got to talk to the mayor because we
Yeah.
just moved into Rolling Meadows, and with the trucks and everything, and mayor wanted us to be in the parade of Rolling Meadows, so we
Sure.
brought the trucks and did a show and stuff like this. So anyway, yeah, so when we were doing these deliveries, these were extremely expensive machines, like $1 to I think $2 million machines, and we were quite worried. I was definitely quite worried about like what happens when we offload these machines, because we were using a dry van, and then we'd have to pull up to a hospital and forklift the thing out from the back. So it was like a really weird setup. But the most of the shipments that they had, they used the Conestoga trailer for. It was just kind of like an open hatch. But anyway, because I was so worried about what could have happened, I told the team, like, we need to put a camera inside of the trailer so that we can see what the heck is going on. And we actually started showing this to our customer, and we're like, hey, look, like, if something goes wrong, we got it on camera.
Okay.
And we'll let you know if it was our fault or if it was, somebody from your side that loaded it. And funny enough, I think it was literally maybe 2 weeks after we put that camera in, they were clearing out a warehouse, moving to like Carroll Stream or something.
Okay.
And funny enough, one of the warehouse workers on their end didn't strap the machine properly.
Sure.
And so we get there, Janos opens the doors and the thing's like tipped over. And I'm like, I really hope that the footage is like it worked. It didn't, because it was like a prototype, technically system. So
Sure.
And it was definitely there. We pulled it up, and we sent it to the customer, and they're like, this is great, this is awesome. And so when we started talking to customers basically around like 2020, certainly after the pandemic, it was like May 2020 or something, it was one of the things that we showed. And one of the things that we got a complaint about, which was that this trucking company that we work with, KWA, really top-notch carrier, all they do is pharma and high-value, high-risk stuff, and they said that we had no idea what was going on during the loading process or offloading process. And sometimes, they would load pallets onto our truck that were already experienced an excursion. So basically, the pallet was already out of temperature, spoiled, but it got onto the KWA's trailer, and KWA then delivers it. Their reefer temperatures are all intact, but when they deliver it, the receiver ends up saying this is spoiled.
KWA
Inc. Yeah.
KWA Inc.
Yeah, these guys are solid.
You told me about them before. Okay. I know. Oh, there's KRW. That was a Polish owner operator.
They're one of the few Polish operations that do it by the book. Like they because they do high value, high risk stuff.
Sure. Okay.
Not few, but there's a lot of Polish.
I mean, there's definitely a mix where like some get a really bad rep and they deserve it.
Sure.
But they make a bad rep for all Polish people, and there's some Polish people that do an amazing job.
Yeah.
Like literally and it's not even about doing it by the book, but it's like making sure that everything is done properly. Yeah. So anyway, we showed this to them, and this cameras that we put into the trailer, and we didn't think anything about it as it being a product or something, but we showed it to them, and they said, yeah, can we install these onto our trailers? And so had a lot of convincing to do of this hard pivot to all my 30 investors. Sure.
And that was difficult. Was able to get some people behind and further invest, and so and then that was actually the first time where we were getting very close to shipping hardware, and then I learned how difficult shipping hardware really actually is, from a engineering prototype or proof of concept, which is what we had, to an engineering prototype, to a validated prototype, to a design validated prototype, and then you have like a pre-production batch. And finding a contract manufacturer to do all this, making sure that you can get the chips on time. So like when you're designing the circuits, we had obviously it was like right after COVID, and that's when the supply chain issues just started appearing.
Sure.
So we designed a board, a circuit with a certain chip, and literally 3 weeks later, we discovered like, okay, half of these parts that we are using are no longer in stock anywhere. Like you can't even get them from like kind of like the black market in China. You know, it's like, so we redesigned it, and then it also got to the point where there were, you know, continuous amounts of changes that we needed to make. Obviously running out of money again and again and again, and so we ended up producing 5 total. It's not a lot at all, but by the time we were able to kind of ship them, it's just like really low point in my life and stuff like this, and I totally ran out of money. Also had a lot of investors on my cap table too, and so like for people that are raising money, like the less investors that you can get, the better. That will write you bigger checks, because managing these people and then just like giving away too much of the company makes it much more difficult for you to pivot. Sure. Hard pivot, right? Like we did a full hard pivot away from like automated trucks to this cargo camera type thing, and so yeah, it got extremely difficult. But technically, all that IP is still there, and the company's not exactly closed. Just like nobody's working on it at the time. Yeah. And right around that time, basically, is when we met, right? So.
Oh wow! So you were working on the camera stuff for a while.
Oh no, sorry. Technically, no.
Because we met 2 months ago.
No. So I take that back. I ended up switching and figuring out what I was going to be doing, like maybe next or whatnot.
Sure.
And started working with some advisors on a dock scheduling system, and that was really fun. But we just weren't able to get that anywhere, and I was working on that for pretty much all of early this year.
Okay.
And then we met, I guess.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And now you've obviously had a lot of lessons going from Autopilot AI
yeah.
in terms of raising money, in terms of just even running a company, and now we're working on shipperscrm.com, which is I'm really excited about it. It's definitely something that I've always wanted to plug an application in for the audience from FreightCaviar, and I think it's a perfect application for anyone that's in sales, customer sales. Sure. In the logistics world.
I would have loved to use it when we were looking for direct
totally.
to shipper deliveries. But yeah, for those that are listening, Shipper CRM is planned to be the easiest way to find, manage, and win shippers, new freight business. And so we got together with Paul and building the technology, and Paul's marketing, sales, and we got another co-founder as well. It's soon to be announced. So
yeah, definitely. So a lot of exciting things going on our end, and I even from my own experience, I know that every failure that I've ever had in my life has only been a positive in like I guess like the when you look at the from an outside perspective, like, or just inward, I've learned a lot from it. I've started 2 brokerages that I've closed. I've opened a restaurant that I've closed, and honestly, the one thing that I never thought would turn into a business, but it is, and it's growing month to month. We have a growing team, and we're having a growing presence in the logistics industry. It's FreightCaviar. I started making memes, and now this is the one thing that's actually working right now, alongside Shipper CRM, because we have paying customers that are happy. Yeah. We haven't opened the floodgates yet, and
we have a wait list of now. The thing that definitely pulled me into this for sure was how quickly you were essentially able to put together a wait list right through your network, which was awesome. So that's motivating. Talking to customers is like the number one thing that during hard times or gloomy times, because startups are literally just always roller coasters. Talking to customers, you said this I think too. It's like just talking to customers fixes like literally every gloom throughout the day, right? So.
Always talking to customers. It's important. Always building a relationship, and definitely.
Yeah. So, What else?
What else? Well, so an update on the World Cup game. England's winning 2-0 and the US is winning 1-0. Right now, if you were to put $1 for Wales winning, it's times 210.
Okay.
So, and if you put it on England, it's 1.01. So
Okay.
you can make 1 penny. It's kind of bizarre. I'll just increase it to 220. So that's a little update on the World Cup. We're definitely watching
For
here.
the founders listening, the best bets to place are the ones on yourself only. So,
But yeah, so if anyone wants to learn more about Autobon AI, check out their website. We'll put a link right here. You go to this website right here to learn more about Krystian and his background. You can watch a video of him actually creating software that has a self-driving truck by clicking here, and then make sure to subscribe to our channel and stay tuned for more podcasts coming soon. Thanks, Krystian.
thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Daily FreightCaviar podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, or if you didn't, leave a review. Let me know what you think. I appreciate any feedback. If you'd like to have more FreightCaviar content, go to freightcaviar.com and subscribe to my email newsletter.